Hey guys, so this is what we're at with this is where we're at with games. Spending this much money only for your game to fail. So it says allegedly. Ubisoft allegedly spent between 650 and 850 million on its quadruple A game, Skull und Bones. That is more than most movies, and it fails. So close to a billion, and it failed. And it failed. What are companies doing? And I mean, I think I've heard the name floating around, Skull and Bones, but I don't think I've ever seen kind of like any promotional thing for it or rumor claims Ubisoft. Yeah, we just read that because it's in the title. According to YouTuber and Demian and his sources within Ubisoft, the project that ruined Ubisoft and put them in dire financial position thereafter, after Star Wars Outlaws soft sales in the second quarter, is Skull und Bones, which he claimed cost between 650 million and I'm like, that's insane. That is insane. I was also told that the project that ruined Ubisoft was not only Outlaws or Shadows, it was actually Skull and Bones. Wait, what? 10 years the thing's been. That's like Concord levels. I mean, not the money. Like, this far exceeds anything that Concord had. But Concord was in development for like 8 years. It lasted 2 weeks. And then they pulled it. And then they gave everyone refunds. My sources told me that they've seen multiple different versions of the game that were each completely different over the years. They said they were told that the budget that was spent on Skull and Bones, it would range between over 10 years. Imagine working on a game for 10 years and having nearly $1 billion budget and the game fails. How does that even happen? And that Skull and Bones failed so badly for Ubisoft, it was the actual reason why they're dying the way they are. It's not actually Outlaws or Shadows, if you can believe it. So they sunk a legendary amount of resources into a game, and it clearly did not work out for them. Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot infamously described Skull and Bones as a quadruple A game and attempted to justify the game's price tag of $70 during the company's Q3 sales for its fiscal year 2024 back in February, about a week before the game's release. He was asked by one investor, could you maybe unpack for us the decision to price at $70? You've certainly emphasized that it's designed for a lot of live services. What drove the decision to make the game pay to play when you could presumably limit the size of the player base and thereby PRI in the game? Guillermo responded, "You will see the Skull and Crossbones is a fully fledged game." Now, you can see it on the market today. It's a very big game, and we feel that the people will really see how vast and how big and complete the game is, bigly. It's a really full AAA, quadruple A game. It's big. It's one of the biggest games you've ever seen that will deliver in the long run. Well, we're not talking. You shouldn't be thinking about the long run. You should be thinking about like day one. Because if you have bad release on day one, yeah, screw the long run. That long run isn't even going to happen. Now, it might happen down the line when it's become some obscure piece of video game history, like a lot of like Nintendo games and stuff. How you'll have like these obscure games that no one knows about them at the time, but then somehow they have like a cult following behind them now because, you know, you can get them online, you know, play it on emulators and stuff, and suddenly people are going crazy for it. But I don't think that's going to be the case here. With games like this, if you're going to spend close to $1 billion, you want your first day sales or your first week sales to be the top. You don't want it like, oh, well, for the long run. If no one buys it, then there is no long run. Following the game's release, Tom Henderson and Insider Gaming reported the game currently has around 850,000 players total at the time of writing, which includes those who have opted to play the game with the 8-hour free trial provided by Ubisoft. In the statement report, Henderson detailed Ubisoft spent around $200 million on the game and doesn't expect to make it back. Yeah, here's the oh god, it's like a wave. It's like a wave. A bad wave. Like here's the shoreline. It's just perfect for, you know, bodyboarding. But not so great for anything else. Those were fun back in the day. Although sometimes you don't need a bodyboard, you just all natural. Of course, then when the wave smacks you against the sand, and you know your body starts to get, you know, scratched up from all the shells and stuff on the beach. But hey, it makes you tougher. It makes you tougher because you can handle that kind of pain, being crashed down onto the shore and shredded up by freaking shells. But you have a lot of yeah, I do actually. I love to just natural bodyboard when we went to the beach. We had bodyboards, or boogie boards is what what they're called. Yeah, that's what I did. I was just all natural, just. And then you get home, and then you're lying in bed, and it just feels like you're the entire time because you spent so much time in the water. So you're just laying there trying to sleep and you're on your back and it just feels like you're still just floating there in the waves. Relaxing, but kind of sickening at the same time. I mean, at least it's better than this. It's better than feeling like you're doing this. It estimated the game has sold between 23,000 to 34,000 copies. For comparison, that is estimated that is around the estimates for Firewalk Studios Concord. Concord had estimated Steam sales between 20 to 25K. What do you make? Oh, they're wasting all this money for nothing. Again, these companies are just burning through money. They're not in a business to make money anymore. Almost $1 billion wasted. And I mean, hang on. Let's look up the game. Well, here's IGN's review of it. So, let's see.
Like spotting the first sign of shore after years adrift, Skull and Bones has finally actually found its way to launch. 6 separate delays might make you understandably apprehensive about Ubisoft's long-brewing pirate game, but after spending over 60 hours hoisting sails and swabbing decks, I've had a yo-ho whole lot of co-op fun. The 17th century Indian Ocean works well as a vast open world to be explored and plundered. The RPG mechanics are briny deep with opportunities for build crafting, and the naval combat is consistently entertaining. Predictably, there are still some major concerns common with always online games nowadays, including performance issues and bugs aplenty, as well as a very small list of endgame activities that become monotonous and grindy. Skull and Bones might not be the quadruple A man-o'-war Ubisoft was hoping for just yet, but for having a year of upcoming content mapped out, it's already quite seaworthy. Skull and Bones is fairly unique in the scheme of open-world RPGs, letting you sail the ocean in search of loot and infamy. Alone or alongside the ships of up to 2 friends as a fleet, you'll gather resources and complete action-packed heists to feed your greed and power up your vessel, which is usually a blast. might be tempting to compare this online ocean to Sea of Thieves, Skull and Bones actually has more in common with the Forza Horizon series. They're both over-the-top arcadey open-world RPGs where you play as a vehicle, except instead of racing cars with friends, you're committing piracy in boats. And that laser focus on intricate maritime gameplay and commodity simulation is extremely enjoyable most of the time. Even if you never get to swing a sword or fire a flintlock like in Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. While it's a bit odd at first that you only...
So you're playing a game where you're pirates and you're basically shipbound the entire time. Really? Almost $1 billion for nothing but some cutscenes, simulator type crap, and ship battling. No actual gameplay with humans. Just on the ship battling with other ships. Can't imagine why it failed. People don't want a pirate game with just fighting on ships. If you want to be a swashbuckler, there's more to treasure than just finding it on the open seas. You know, caves and pillaging villages and this and that. Not just...
ever explore the world by controlling your ship. Aside from brief intermissions at the social hub, it took just a few hours for me to feel like I wasn't missing out on much. 'Cause I mean, boats are fun. Disappointingly, Skull and Bones only has the faintest whiff of a story. You have some conversations with a couple pirate legends.
He taunts me like I'm a caged animal and I've got the urge to bite.
Run a few missions for them that conclude in a boss fight against a particularly mean boat. Then they tell you to buzz off and do your own thing just as fast. NPCs are little more than vendors and quest dispensers with no substantial story connecting them.
Use force or underhanded means to...
Almost $1 billion. Where did it all go? Because the models themselves look atrocious. Did they spend all that money making the water look as realistic as possible? Because that's what it seems like. The map itself doesn't seem very large. The models look like something they came out 3-4 generations ago. And you're basically seabound. Where did all the money go to?
secure more manufactories and put them to your use.
I expect my pirate games to have a bit of drama, infighting, and betrayal, but Skull and Bones doesn't even attempt to tell a tale of any substance or consequence. Instead, ship-to-ship PvE combat is the star of the show, and it requires strategy, cooperation with other player-controlled vessels, and good aim to pull off at higher levels. For example, when taking on powerful fleets found in later areas, you might want to reconfigure your ship to a tank build optimized for withstanding hits and dealing close-range damage, while your friends focus on DPS or even support options capable of healing allies by peppering them with nonsensically medicinal cannonballs. Crafting new ships and trying out different builds is extremely compelling. Just when I thought I'd built my ideal vessel, I'd see a special cannon or a unique piece of ship armor I just couldn't live without, then gleefully jump through surprisingly rewarding hoops by attacking certain factions and seeking out rare resources to buy a schematic and craft it. For example, I spent many hours and tons of resources to craft my first mortar, which unlocked the ability to rain fire from the sky on my enemies like I was calling in an airstrike. Sure, doing so forced me to spend every last scrap of my ill-gotten riches, but can you really put a price on this? As you dive into the endgame, the builds that open up get downright wild, and you can unlock a ship-mounted flamethrower that spews ghostly blue flames, or rocket launchers that do this. Crazy stuff. Once you've established yourself on the high seas a bit, you'll also begin to understand both trade routes and the supply and demand they influence in different parts of the world, which adds an interesting economy management mini-game to the mix. You'll even gain access to the black market via the Helm, a clever endgame mechanic that allows you to build and manage underworld businesses by creating and delivering embargoed goods, like good ol' opium. This opens up a whole new way to line your pockets, as you ferry legitimate and illegitimate goods to and fro, buying low in one place and selling high in another, like a pirate with a bachelor's degree in business. Yar, we be looking for that ROI. Later on, you can even conquer coastal settlements to convert them into manufactories that generate passive income and help you obtain the most powerful equipment. Before I knew it, I suddenly found myself playing Pirate SimCity, or as I like to call it, SimCT, as I managed lumberyards and farming settlements, which is a great playground for the endgame grind. That's because, in order to add settlements to your collection, you'll need to participate in Skull and Bones' endgame events, which include PvP activities which don't appear.
Anyone else bored? I mean, it's my video and I'm bored out of my mind. I know I could stop at any moment, but I really want to see what these people give this game, like score-wise, because are some of the things flashy, impressive? Sure, but it looks really boring. It looks really boring, and I don't know where almost $1 billion was put into. Was it the music? Was it the landscape? Because even the landscape, the water is probably the most realistic thing in the game. So where did all the money go? Because it's not a complicated game. It's all bound to the ship and the gameplay around that. So where did all the money go to?
Until later on, adding a neat new wrinkle to things right as they start to feel stale with the overwhelmingly PvE foundation. These isolated PvP events are a nice compromise from having griefers constantly attack everyone all the time, since you've got to opt into each of them, but the reward is usually worth the trouble. When they work properly, that is, and unfortunately, they often don't. Bugs are obnoxiously common, like one where incorrect markers get put all over the map. During one PvP event, Skull and Bones crashed entirely, and the loot I was carrying was nowhere to be found when I logged back in. Issues like these are pretty rampant once you reach the endgame, and they'll continue to throw a massive wet sail over the whole thing until they get addressed. Even when these events are working, the endgame is needlessly grindy in its current state. Skull and Bones doesn't have nearly enough variety in its activities to keep things interesting for very long. Since it costs thousands of gold coins to unlock single items, you're expected to play a whole heck of a lot long after the campaign has sunk to the bottom of the sea. There aren't currently any quests or enemies in the world that require those powerful items to defeat either, aside from other players and specific events. Hopefully, the upcoming seasonal content will provide actual reasons to want them, but Ubisoft would also need to add a lot more activities to keep that grind interesting, because right now, all you can do is repeat the same handful of tasks, then shuttle your loot from each settlement back to the base ad nauseum.
It is not always about whose ship has the biggest cannons in her belly.
Although it's not particularly unique in the live service space, Skull and Bones is extremely unstable right now too. I had crashes every couple of hours, pixelated textures that loaded right in front of me, and most irritating of all, constant erroneous notifications popping up every couple of seconds, sometimes repeatedly for hours at a time, clogging up the screen with obnoxious and inaccurate warnings that drove me absolutely up the wall. I still enjoyed most of my time lobbing explosives at unsuspecting merchant vessels, but shiver me timbers, that exasperating layer of jank really made it harder to love. Skull and Bones isn't the successor to Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag that many seem to want, and it isn't many of the things Ubisoft itself said it would be at various points in its storied development. But the seafaring RPG we ultimately got is still surprisingly good. Sailing around the Indian Ocean firing cannons, mortars, and giant ballista at your foes is a fun time. The RPG mechanics and cooperative build crafting is as deep as the ocean, with plenty of awesome gadgets to grind for. And the economy simulation is impressively in depth. It doesn't quite fulfill the promise of a decade-long cruise to port yet either, with a thin endgame, almost no story to speak of, and general instability that sometimes makes the adventure feel like a rough draft. But here's hoping some of those shortcomings can be washed away by the waves of content already planned to come in an ambitious live service roadmap that's fast approaching.
And there we have it, the infamous IGN 7. Oh, you never disappoint, IGN. You never disappoint. Stay gold, pony boy. Stay gold. Oh, God. IGN, you never fail, do you? Always with the 7s. Always with the 7s. Oh, that made it all worth it. I went into it thinking maybe they were going to give it a different score. I thought they were going to give it like an 8 or 9. But no, IGN, you are so predictable. You gave it the 7. You gave me exactly what I was thinking you were going to do. Oh. Oh. I think I would have had a heart attack if they gave it something other than a 7. Seven months ago. Jesus. Yeah. So, IGN gave it a 7. Whew. Ooh, anyone else getting a little, hot there? But then, you know, it's like their way they're talking about it is like, oh yeah, the game is freaking boring pretty much after the campaign. We're going to give it a 7. Oh, IGN. Oh, IGN, when in a world where things fail you, you're the one thing we can count on to never fail us. Because you can never seem to give anything a score other than 7. Almost as if they're afraid to give it a real score. They're like, oh, 7 is like, you know, if we gave it a 5, you know, it could be seen as bad. But, you know, a 7, good round number for us. You know, it kind of like in the middle. It's neutral. We like it. It has some good parts. It has bad parts. So people shouldn't be upset when we give it a 7. But you're so predictable. I mean, I think I read the comments. It's like, I haven't watched it. Bet you they're going to give it a 7. And then you had like, oh boy, they gave it a 7. What a surprise. So almost $1 billion. Where did it all go? Because it didn't go to graphics, because, you know, I was doing mocking and mimicking the freaking way the character models look. The area itself doesn't look super realistic, so it really didn't go into that. Did it go to all the flashy crap for the ships and the water to make the water look as realistic as possible? Like, I don't see where almost $1 billion went when we have games that have come out that cost less than that, like half of what this cost, and they look super realistic, solid gameplay, solid story. So where did the money go? In the pocket. But yeah, Skull and Bones. 10 years, $1 billion, and it fails. Not surprised, because this company is just, it used to be up here, and now it's, I don't know what the company's doing. I don't know if it's the stupid CEO who doesn't know how to shut his mouth. I don't know if it's underexperienced developers there. I don't know what the problem is, but Ubisoft used to be up there. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. You guys know the drill. I'll see you guys later. Bye, guys.